So hi everyone, very happy to be here. This has been actually it's been a while since my last live code, so very happy to be doing this again. And today I have something that uh, I've been waiting on for a long time to do. So I'm really excited about this. So I hope everybody's been doing well, and I hope everybody's been staying safe uh, and sheltering in place. Coronavirus is still out there, so hope everybody's staying safe. Hope everybody's leveling up on a bunch of knowledge from home. I know a lot of you out there are, looking to qualify. That you're doing a lot of training. You guys are, learning a lot of new things from home. That's great. It's always nice to see the community do a lot more at times like this. So it's great to see a lot of you doing, work from home and of course learning from home and doing certain things from home, although it is very restrictive in some ways. So today I have a slightly different topic that I'm going to be talking about. But before that, a few things that I just want to talk about. Our DevSecOps training next week on July 1 and 2 is almost sold out. So if you want to go and get yourself a seat on that training, go to store.v45.com and get yourself a seat in our DevSecOps training for next week. Do not miss it. It's We are going to be doing one or two of these classes in a year, and one of the things that we're doing this year, we're adding a lot of the new labs. So the labs we're including for Black Hat, many of them are also being included in this class. So July 1 and 2, definitely check out the DevSecOps masterclass that's happening live online. And you, of course, not only get access to the labs and the material, but you also continue to have access to the labs and the material. So that's really cool. That's really cool that we have about the DevSecOps masterclass that's happening. All right. So with that, let's get started with this week's live code session. It's not so much live code as a release party, so to speak, kind of a live release party that I'm going to be doing. First of all, shout out to Tilak, who has been monumental in this release. He has really worked night and day with me on this particular release of this particular product. So it's been awesome. I'm really happy to see that people from my team are taking this product very seriously, and it's very nice to see that a lot of large companies have taken ThreatPlaybook pretty seriously. In fact, we got a couple of requests over the last 3-4 months about ThreatPlaybook, so we are constantly upgrading it. It still remains open source, so make sure that you leverage ThreatPlaybook's capability. Hi, for those of you who are catching up on LinkedIn, this is being live streamed both on LinkedIn and YouTube. So, hi, Jay. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the rest of the stream that we have. All right, so let's get started. So, first of all, what is ThreatPlaybook? Anyone on the stream watching wants to hazard a guess? What is ThreatPlaybook? Anyone? Now, ThreatPlaybook was meant to solve a bunch of problems, and I'll talk about what those problems are. Right now, ThreatPlaybook was meant to solve one of the biggest challenges that ThreatPlaybook was meant to solve was the problem of managing threat models. Right. So a lot of us do threat modeling. Like a lot of us like to do threat modeling. So the problem with threat modeling was that you have different types of tools. Many of these tools are extremely visual in nature. Some of them require you to draw these complex diagrams. I was not very happy with the fact that we needed these complex diagrams because simply most of the time is spent in diagramming rather than actually enumerating threats. So this was something that we wanted to change, and that's why we came up with ThreatPlaybook. And so ThreatPlaybook allows you to codify threat models. You can codify them as code, and not only you can codify them, you can also load them onto a server, correlate with multiple vulnerability results, so on and so forth, and you should be able to get a lot more value for your threat model. So with that, I'll just give you a quick tour of ThreatPlaybook. Let's just open up the GitHub link itself. I'm just going to open this up and start sharing my screen. So I'm guessing everybody can see my screen. So we have a brand new site, threatplaybook.io. This is the site that ThreatPlaybook is going to be hosted on. all the docs, all the new features, all the new stuff that we're working on in terms of threat modeling, DevSecOps around Threat Playbook is going to go in here. We still need to upgrade the automation library a little bit, but that's something that we're definitely going to be doing over the course of the next month or so. But that's usually a smaller effort. This time it's been a huge effort that has gone into changing Threat Playbook this time around. So let's talk a little bit about Threat Playbook. So Threat Playbook is hosted on GitHub at GitHub Threat Playbook. Right? So just going to share that link here as well. So this is where Threat Playbook is hosted. If you guys want to check it out, you should definitely go check it out. If you want to contribute, definitely look to contribute. So that's something. We're still on the old one. I'm going to actually make a pull request and merge Threat Playbook to the latest version. We still have the old stuff. So we're going to merge to 3.0.0 beta 1. So this is awesome, right? So we're going to do a live merge, pull request, and then of course I'm the one who uh, pulls it and merges the entire code base. So I'm going to be doing that as well. No conflicts. Seems like there are no conflicts with the base. Waiting, but I don't see that there are going to be too many conflicts with the existing code base. Lots of changes. So I'm just going to merge, and we have version 3 that is just released. So we were on version 2. Now we have version 3. So those of you who have been looking forward to this version, I know some of you have commented on the issues tab. I have closed those issues. We have changed a lot of things around Threat Playbook. So let me just talk about a few things that we have done now that we have merged to version 3. So this is the latest version of Threat Playbook. We have our brand new site that I just also put up here. So definitely go check this out. So I'm going to do a quick tour of Threat Playbook, and I'm going to do it right from the docs. So Threat Playbook's docs, you have a quick start, and the quick start is as the name suggests, the quickest way of getting started, right? So you can install the server, install the client, use the CLI. So we've written a brand new CLI in Golang. The previous CLI was in Python. There was nothing particularly wrong with Python, but it did cause a bunch of dependency issues for people using it. We decided to go with Golang because the CLI is so much easier. Writing CLIs in Golang is so much easier and more maintainable and much more stable. So we decided to go with Golang. So we've rewritten the CLI entirely in Golang. We've rewritten the entire server as well. So previously the server was all GraphQL. Now the reason we decided to move away from GraphQL is because GraphQL was not very friendly from a especially from a error handling perspective. We found it very difficult, especially the Python GraphQL libraries were horrible. So we decided to move away from GraphQL and go back to a very standard REST API setup. I decided not to go with GraphQL for Threat Playbook. So we moved out of GraphQL, went to standard REST API, which means that it is an entire rewrite of the product in Python. Again, we're using Flask. One of the cool things about using Flask is that we are not only able to deploy it as a web app, but you can also actually use Flask as a serverless app. So if you want to deploy Threat Playbook as a serverless app, you should be able to do that. Although we don't have it in the instructions just as yet, we have not done that ourselves. But Flask makes it a lot easier to deploy Threat Playbook on an AWS Lambda style deal, and you should be able to scale it out on your cloud as well. So that's something that we can do with the latest version of Threat Playbook. Tilak has written the all new web UI, which is pretty cool. I'm going to talk about this web UI. We're going to look at this web UI as we go along in this live stream. So that's something that we're going to be going along looking at as well. We have a quick start and we have some tutorials. We're still adding more docs to this, but the tutorials kind of give you a very detailed perspective of what's happening, how to install it, what is story-driven threat modeling, all of that stuff is going to be in the tutorial as well. So you have this, and of course the web UI itself. We have some tutorials around the web UI. Of course, one of the things we are going to add more to this, we're going to add more guides, we're going to add more stuff around the automation library. Threat Playbook, since it's completely API driven, you can actually automate stuff, you can load it. It is also OWASP ASVS compatible. OWASP ASVS compatible in terms of its, in terms of the findings that you have, um, in terms of the responses that you can get, in terms of the defenses that you can provide with Threat Playbook, it is completely ASVS compatible as well. So that's something that we have. So let's talk about this. Let's actually stop talking and actually run the demo, right? So I'm going to, I have ThreatPlaybook running on my local machine. Now, ThreatPlaybook is very much like a DevOps oriented tool. So which means that you're largely going to be using it in the CLI, right? The CLI is going to be the main way in which you're going to interact with it. The web UI is still read only. It's not a fully functional, fully CRUD oriented web UI. Web UI is read only. You'll be able to select stuff. You'll be able to read stuff. You won't be able to edit stuff on the web UI. You'll be able to get all of that functionality completely on the CLI. So let's look at the CLI and actually run this. Just give me a sec while I set up the CLI. So that would be, just give me a sec. Just bring it out on screen here. Actually, let me minimize that a little bit. Yeah. So since I've written it in Go, you will be looking at a brand new CLI from us, Playbook client. And yeah, this is the new CLI. So the new CLI has been entirely rewritten in Golang, like I said, right? So entirely rewritten in Golang. We have compiled three binaries: one for Mac, one for Linux, and one for Windows. Now, the way you would install CLI is essentially like so. You can go to the docs, which is here, and you can install the CLI. You can install the server with Docker Compose. It's meant the deployment has been sorted out quite a bit now, especially with the Docker Compose stuff. Last time we had a couple of folks writing to us that they were not able to get the server up and running, and we did, try to give them support, and it did work for most of them, but for some of them it didn't. So this has been definitely made a lot simpler this time around. The CLI has also been made a lot simpler. You just have to install a single binary. That's it. That's really all you have to do. You just have to wget it from here and install it for Mac, Linux, and Windows. Please note, we're not tested it on Windows. If you are interested on testing it on Windows and helping us out with the tests, we'll be happy to get your contributions on this. So just going back, let's run the CLI. So the way ThreatPlaybook CLI works is that it's a single binary today. So you just have to run playbook, and I think I need to download and install the CLI myself. I think I removed it. But I'm going to copy it, do what we have written in the instructions, and the CLI. Yeah. So now we have the CLI. So the CLI gives you most of the capability of ThreatPlaybook, right? So whatever ThreatPlaybook has to offer in terms of you being able to load the threat model and so on, the CLI gives you the ability to do that. So definitely look at the CLI as the best way to do things. And the CLI has been made a lot easier as well. Now, the first thing we're going to do is configure the CLI. So I'm going to configure the CLI. I'm going to say playbook configure. And when we start off Threat Playbook, we start off with a default user. You can change that default user in the Docker Compose file. If you want to keep the same default user, I'm just keeping the same default user. You can just go ahead with that. And each CLI feature also has a help menu. So whatever you need from this is going to be in the CLI as well. So yeah, so the default is 80. So you get all of that information right off the bat. So you have playbook, configure, email. So I'm using the default user admin@admin.com. U is 192.168.1.46, which is my local IP. And there's no need for a port. I think this should be fine. Oh, we need a mandatory port. Okay. Mandatory port 80. And I'm going to enter my password. So we have successfully configured and logged in. Now at this point, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to change password. Last time we had a bunch of CLI issues, especially because it was in Python. There were a lot of dependencies. Now it's Golang, so it runs like a single binary anywhere you want. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a project. Okay, so the first thing you can do is go ahead and say playbook apply. So playbook apply is kind of the command that you're going to run for creating a project, creating a threat model, creating anything just like kubectl apply if you're a Kubernetes user, right? So it's one of those things. So you get a detailed help menu here as well. So you see that it has feature, which is the user story, and then of course the project, which is the actual project. So we're going to first create a project. So that's going to be playbook apply hyphen n project hyphen n. I'm going to call this test project. And all of this is really well documented in the guides right now. So if you go ahead, you configure the CLI, you configure the project, that's it. You really have to just follow the guide. It's really cool, right? So just easy to go. The guide, the quick start gets you started up and running with ThreatPlaybook in a matter of a few minutes. You don't really need to worry about anything else. So we've created a project called test project. Now we're going to load a threat model. So previously, we had a few issues with the threat model that we used to have, where you could index the threat models and you would read all the threat models in a directory. The problem with that was the deletes became hard, the synchronization became hard. It was generally a pain to handle. So what we have done now is you have to declare this as a feature definition. So let me explain what that is. So in this case, what we have done is you need to create your threat model as a file, as a YAML file. This is not new to those of you who have already used ThreatPlaybook. Right? For those of you who use ThreatPlaybook, this nothing much has changed here. Actually, nothing has changed here. The feature remains the same. The structure of the feature remains the same. So a feature is a user story. So the way ThreatPlaybook works is you start with a user story, then you capture the abuser stories of that user story or abuse cases of that particular user story, and then you capture threat scenarios of those abuse cases, right? Now, just like before, we have a bunch of pre-canned, pre-loaded threat scenarios. SQL injection, stuff like this is already loaded. That's why we have the repo type threat scenario, right? So if you use a repo type threat scenario, you don't have to write anything more about the threat scenario. You just get started, start creating. It will automatically take all the details related to that particular threat scenario from the repository. That's why it's called repo, right? So it takes it from the repository automatically, and you don't really need to worry about it. And when you want to declare a completely unique threat scenario that's not in the system, then you can you can write an inline threat scenario, right? So you can say, this is inline, I am going to upload malware, this is an inline threat scenario, and this is CWE so-and-so, this has test cases so-and-so. You can define all of those things, right? That's one of the cool things you can do, of course, with ThreatPlaybook. So you can define this as an inline threat scenario, right? So let's run this, and so let's load this threat scenario. So this is a feature. A feature has, remember, a feature has several abuse cases, or could have several abuse cases or abuser stories. An abuser story could have several threat scenarios. A threat scenario could have mitigations and test cases. So that's why we have test cases here as well. You can also write mitigations in line. So this is just an example threat scenario that we're going to load into the system. So I'm going to say playbook, apply feature -f, and you need to declare a full path for this. I'm just going to take the path for this, and project not set. Oh, I'm not set the project. You need to do -p test project. My mistake. Right? So you need to load this feature into a project. That's what we're doing here. Right? So when you do this, it creates all of this stuff. So you see that it's created all the user story, it's created the abuser story, it's created the threat scenario, it's created the test cases, it's created all of that stuff. And since a lot of the threat scenarios are already part of the repository, all of those test cases are already gotten preloaded as part of ThreatPlaybook existing database. We're also looking at creating more definitions for cloud and so on and so forth. Expect a lot of changes over the next 3 months. This was a huge feature rewrite, so which is why we could not really add too much new functionality on top of it. But the idea is that we're going to add much more functionality on top of it as well. And also an automation library that's going to make things a lot easier. Right. So now we have these feature loaded. Now, one of the things you can also do is now start interacting with ThreatPlaybook from the CLI itself, right? Like I said, the CLI itself can be used to interact with ThreatPlaybook. So you can do playbook. Let's look at what are the options that are available to interact. You can do something called get, right? So when you do get, you can see what I'm going to be talking about. So playbook get, and let's look at the help menu here. You can get the user story, and you can get the user story as a single thing, or you can get a cascading list of user stories, right? So you can get the entire JSON of user story, threat scenario, all of that stuff. You can do that. So let's look at this playbook. Get user story. I think it's a name. You need to, yeah. So you need to give it the name. So our user story is called this, right? I'm gonna query this. So if you do playbook get a user story, if an n, oh, I need to set the project, test project, and you'll see you'll get this nice little table definition here. However, let's say you don't want a table, you want something in JSON that you want to be able to parse and load into something, or you want to be able to parse and use that for something else. So you can do the same thing, except that you can mention the format as JSON, and you get the JSON value project, right? So you get all of that information as well. Um, Looks like there's something wrong with my camera. Okay, I guess my sound is still on, so I'm just going to continue. Now, one of the other things you can do with ThreatPlaybook is, I'm not sure what just happened here. Just give me a second, please. Yeah, sorry about that. There was something, oops. Cancel. Sorry about that. I think there was some issue with my camera and some of the other stuff that I was using. Yeah, so let's move on. The next thing we're going to do is also get a cascading JSON. So one of the things you can do is write a cascading, get a cascade, a recursive thing. So not only can you retrieve the user story, you can also get the user story, abuser story, test scenario, the entire list of things, right? So the entire list of things can be, retrieved from the server. So if I do C, no, sorry, I think it is R, that's recursive, you get a massive JSON. In fact, if you format it nicely with JQ, you can even kind of pretty print it. You can see that it's all nicely pretty printed, and you get the entire feature definition right there, right? You can actually do that from the CLI. Now, coming to the UI, the UI is really cool. Tilak has worked on the UI quite a bit, and the UI is definitely a lot more stable and a lot easier to use than ever before. So the UI, you can log in just like you could with the CLI. And once you log in, the UI has a lot of cool features that you'll see. So of course, we have only one project, we have one user story, and we have 9 threat scenarios. You can go into projects and you can get access to all of this, right? So you get test project vulnerabilities, you get a and you can check out the user stories, the abuser stories, and all of that stuff. So this is the user story, the abuser story, and you get all of the information related to the threat scenarios, right? So the threat scenarios has SQL injection, CW89, and you see that we have direct integration with OWASP ASVS. So OWASP ASVS, all the controls related to SQL injection, which is CW89, are now part of ThreatPlaybook, right? So it's pretty cool. You should be able to get that. So CWE, in this case 521, ASVS gives you a bunch of recommendations to prevent against, you know, weak or default passwords, stuff like that. So this is something you can do. Just give me a second. I think there's something wrong with my lighting as well. Sorry about that. As always, of course, we do have a very cool threat map, which gives you like a visual representation of the entire threat landscape for that one feature. So in this case, we have only one feature, but if you had loaded more features, you would kind of get a cascading list of threats. So you would get the feature, you would get the abuser story, and you would get the abuser story here, the threat scenario. You would get the test cases. In fact, what we have done in the latest version of Threat Playbook, which I'm not going to be able to show you here because we need the automation library probably in a week or two. So in that, if you run a particular vulnerability, if you run a particular vulnerability scan and store those results in Threat Playbook, one of the things Threat Playbook does for you automatically is that it will say that you have run this particular test case. So let's say you ran Zap against the application. Whichever test cases have Zap will automatically get checked. It gets ticked and say that, hey, you've covered that particular test case, and so on and so forth. So you get all of those cool features with the latest version of Threat Playbook, and of course we're adding more as we go along. So this is a basic tour of Threat Playbook. You also are able to add vulnerabilities. You're also able to add. I'm just going to show you adding a vulnerability through the API. Of course, we have a library that allows you to do that. I'm just working on it right now. I think this is the old one. Let me just. I can actually do that through the CLI itself. Should be able to do that. Yeah, so you can create targets, you can create all of that stuff, right? So you can do all of those things in Threat Playbook. So let me just let me try and do that. So you can create targets in Threat Playbook just like you could with the API itself. You can create targets, you can create scans, you can do all of those things. So you can do. Oh, I think project test dash project. So you can create a target. You can add vulnerabilities to this target from that point onwards. Actually, Threat Playbook can start capturing all of that information as well. So you can create a target, you can create a scan, you can do all of those cool things with Threat Playbook. So I'm going to probably cover automation as another session itself, because automation itself has a lot of different, a lot of different features attached to the automation aspects of Threat Playbook. But just know that we have made massive changes in Threat Playbook. It's hopefully become much more stable for all of you to use. For those of you who have written to us wanting us to enhance especially the CLI, it's been done quite a bit in this feature. We really hope you're able to use this and get the most out of Threat Playbook. Again, we always accept contributions from all of you, so definitely if you are interested in contributing to Threat Playbook, I would recommend you do that. In any way, documentation or helping out with the automation, helping out with some other with vulnerability definitions, all that stuff is always appreciated. That's it for me. I think it was a slightly shorter than usual live code session today. Again, the links for all of you, Threat Playbook is now on threatplaybook.io. You can check this out. And of course, if you want to download the source code, this is our GitHub link. You can check this out as well. You should find all of the things that you need to run Threat Playbook. Of course, we're adding more things. We're adding the automation library next. That's going to be next on our plate. So with that, come to the end. Thank you very much for attending this session. And I hope you use and leverage Threat Playbook, and I hope you enjoy it. Enjoy using it. And let us know if you like it. Like many of you have already written to us, please continue to write to us and say that you're using it. You have a lot. We have seen some very huge companies express that they really love it and they want to scale it for their teams, so on and so forth. So we really love hearing such feedback and hearing what you have to say about this. Yeah, thank you very much. And I'll see you next week with another live code session. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.